Is the Samsung Galaxy S20 worth it in 2024? Let's find out after this. What's going on, everyone? You tuned in with Spectacular Tech. This phone was released with 3 other models: the Samsung Galaxy S20, the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, and the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra. This phone was released back in March 6th, 2020. I chose to go with the base model since it's more compact and easier to hold in the hand. As you can see from this quick unboxing, we should have a Samsung fast charger, should be 25 watts. In addition, we should have earphones and a double-sided USB Type-C cord. I remember back in the day when cell phone companies used to give us stuff when we were purchasing cell phones, from chargers to cords to headphones, and sometimes even cases and screen protectors. Unfortunately, the trend of removing all cell phone accessories when you purchase a brand new phone all started with the company Apple, which ended up leading to all the companies following suit. If you were in the United States, this phone came to all major US phone carriers except Verizon. They got their own special model for some reason: the Samsung Galaxy S20 UW or Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra Wideband. Ridiculous name, right? It's such a good thing that this model came with everything that you needed. You got the charger, the headphones, and the cord when you purchase this phone brand new, or even certified for refurbished. But anyway, enough with talking about the accessories. Let's wrap things up and focus our attention over to the cell phone. Now, first things first. Now let's take a look at the design. This phone has a curved 6.2-inch display, WQHD or 2K resolution. It's nice and comfortable in the palm of your hand. You may be wondering, what kind of screen protector do I have on this phone? This is an AM film elastic film screen protector. It's one of the best non-tempered glass screen protectors you can find for curved screen phones. It's easy to install, and I have a link to it in the description if you want to check it out. On the back of this device, I also have a screen protector on the camera lenses. It's not a film screen protector this time, but it's actual glass screen protector. This phone may not have the Galaxy S20 Ultra's 100 megapixel camera, but this model has a decent selection of cameras. It has a 12 megapixel wide angle camera, in addition to a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and finally a 64 megapixel telephoto camera. I never had a problem with any of the photos produced from this camera. It's more than sufficient for photography needs in 2024. It's even comparable to some iPhone photos. Under the display of this phone, we have an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. It's great for when you're not trying to align your face with a face recognition sensor. You can register up to 4 fingers, and it works great if your hands are wet. For a 4-year-old phone, it's pretty snappy in response. The chipset is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 backed with 12 gigabytes of RAM. 12 gigabytes of RAM is even more RAM than most newer phones out here still to this day. Anywhere outside the United States, you're going to have the Exynos 990 chip with 12 gigabytes of RAM. All Galaxy S20 models have 12 gigabytes of RAM unless you buy the United States Galaxy S20 UW Verizon model that only has 8 gigabytes of RAM. You're seeing a slight demonstration of the speed of this phone by me code launching and closing different applications on this phone that were not previously open in RAM. Now, I don't have any games on this phone to show a demonstration of it handling those type of applications, but just know with a good processor and 12 gigabytes of RAM, in addition to 4,000 milliamp hours of battery, will definitely suffice for those gaming needs. Now, you may be wondering, for a 4-year-old phone, how is the battery life holding up after all this time? Well, Samsung has features in place to prevent the battery from aging too aggressively. I've had a setting in my phone enabled since the day I had it that limits the battery from charging past like 85%. Simply not charging past 85% worked wonders for my battery health, and I still get great battery life since the day I got it. Now let's talk about software on this phone. One of the biggest concerns with using an older phone is software support. Samsung has been really good in keeping the Galaxy S20 updated, but it won't be receiving the latest Android 14 update. However, it's still receiving security updates, so you can rest assured that your phone will be protected. Software-wise on this model, I'm running One UI version 5.1 with Android 13. Now let's take a moment to go back to the camera for a second. Let's see how it does outside. We're working with 2 12 megapixel cameras in addition to a 64 megapixel camera. Let's start with the wide angle camera. I'll launch the camera app again, snap the photo. The wide angle camera is a 12 megapixel sensor. Go over to the camera gallery, observe the result. The photo is sharp and nicely in focus of the subject. Now let's showcase the 12 megapixel ultra wide camera with this bigger bush. From standing just a few feet away from it, I'm able to get the whole thing in frame. Now let me showcase the 64 megapixel telephone camera by me zooming up close into this rock. Now let's go over to video recording on this phone. This phone is able to record in 6 different resolutions. We have regular HD, Full HD at 30 frames, Full HD at 60 frames, 4K at 30 frames, 4K at 60 frames, and finally 8K at 24 frames. I recommend going no higher than 4K at 60 frames per second. Now let's look at the front facing camera for a second. It's able to record in all the previous resolutions I mentioned except for 8K. I'll record some footage using the rear wide-angle camera in UHD 60 frames or 4K 60 frames per second. While recording, you get the ability to switch the camera around, snap still photos, pause, and stop recording. Unlike iPhones, you can pause video recordings. Now, let me finally talk about some of the main reasons why I refused to upgrade this model to a newer model. This is one of the last Samsung flagship phones to natively support microSD card expansion. I need to have this ability on my phone because I transfer files between different devices daily. I have 128 gigabytes of internal storage on my phone with an additional 512 gigabytes of microSD card storage. It's funny how Samsung sells microSD cards but doesn't support the functionality on their phones anymore, only their tablets. If you're wondering about the specifications of this microSD card, this is currently at the time of this video the second best from Samsung, as now they have a Samsung Pro Ultimate SD card. But the Samsung Pro Plus that I currently have installed in this phone, I get write speeds of 130 megabytes per second and read speeds of 180 megabytes per second. Samsung Pro Ultimate is only 20 megabytes faster when it comes to read speeds at 200 megabytes, and the writing speeds are both identical at 130 megabytes per second. I'll leave a link to both of these Samsung SD cards in the description if you want to check them out. Okay, next up, let's talk about Samsung Pay, or renamed as Samsung Wallet. The Samsung Wallet feature is available on any Samsung phone model after the Galaxy S6 from years ago, but what makes the Galaxy S20 different from models newer than it is it still has a technology called MST, which stands for Magnetic Secure Transmission, built into it. It also uses an addition of NFC, or Near Field Communication. What makes this feature so compelling is when you're at an older payment terminal that still doesn't accept NFC tap to pay. MST sends a magnetic signal to the card reader to make the machine think you swiped your physical card. All you have to do is tap the glass back of the Galaxy S20 to the area where you swipe your card at, or if it's a newer card reader that has NFC, all you have to do is put the back of the phone to the area specified, usually by an icon that accepts the wireless payment. Usually the places that say they don't accept Apple Pay or Tap to Pay, which also uses NFC, are also places where you can use MST to force it to work in those locations that say they don't accept Tap to Pay. iPhones and most other Android phones only use NFC, while this phone had an additional MST technology. Having both NFC for newer payment terminals and MST for older payment terminals is notably one of this phone's best abilities. Okay, next, let's talk in more details about the screen. It's a WQHD display running at 60 Hz. Yes, there are phones that run at a faster refresh rate than this phone, but what I'm mainly going to point out is this is the last smaller flagship phone Samsung made with a WQHD display. All the newer models they created after this generation come at 1080p as the highest resolution unless you buy the top of the line Galaxy Ultra model. With the Samsung Galaxy S20 from 2020, you get the sharpest display Samsung makes on a phone and a nice and comfortable to hold compact 6.2 screen size. While we're on the topic of phone screen sizes, let's transition over to talking about some of the cases that I have used for this phone. I highly recommend you get a case for this phone since it's glass on the front and back. My number one go-to case is Otterbox Symmetry. It's slim and compact. It's really easy to install, as you can see, and gives good drop protection for this phone. It has a lip around the entire edge of the case just in case it falls on the front. Next up, this isn't the most durable case, but this is definitely the cooler case. This one is if you want to attract attention to your cell phone. All you do is line it up with the back, then snap it on. It's easier you start where the camera is at to align it. Then now I'll place it down, this activates the case, and now you'll see it turn on. Look at this case glisten like a night full of stars. This case is able to show pop-up notifications on the back, but I won't have time to show that in this video. Finally, we'll talk about the last topic of this video, and that is cellular connectivity. The Galaxy S20 is able to support 5G but only sub 6 GHz unless you purchase the Verizon model that supports millimeter wave 5G. I get consistent 5G speeds in my area, and even without millimeter wave support, it's still fast enough to be more than sufficient enough. I'm using an AT&T SIM card, and I will do a quick demonstration of the network speed on this phone. Before I start this test, I'm going to check and see how many 5G bars I have. Okay, I'll start this test by opening up the web browser, Samsung Internet, then I'll load some websites using 5G and Wi-Fi turned off. Let's load the Samsung website. It loaded pretty quickly. Now let's try the YouTube website. That's also came up pretty quickly. Now, you definitely won't have any complaints when it comes to network 5G speed on this phone. This was one of Samsung's first flagship phones to introduce 5G, and it's definitely holding up great to this day. Now, let me answer the question I asked at the beginning of this video. Is the Samsung Galaxy S20 worth it in 2024? I say a resounding yes. It supports 5G, has microSD card support, MST, 6.2 WQHD display, great camera, security updates, good battery life, all to make it a great choice still to this day. Well, there you have it. That's all I have for this video. I'll catch you all in the next video on Spectacular Tech.